Well, thanks everyone for coming. This is, I think, going to be a pretty interesting panel between the three of us here. Got some pretty similar opinions, but some different opinions too. So, before we get into it, my name is Michael Key. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Impella Biosciences. With me, I'm pleased to introduce James Gaspard here, CEO of Biochar now, and Tate Dooley, CEO of Key to Life. We're all Colorado companies and all focus on biostimulants and biological products and biological inputs like biochar and microbial inoculants. And today, the title of this panel is Soil Health Inputs and Alternative Growing Solutions. So of course we're going to focus on that as the primary topic, but there's a lot we can unpack within that. So, before we get too far into it, I do want to thank you all for coming on behalf of the Colorado Hemp Company, and we are for better alternatives. We're really glad that you're all able to participate in the expo this year, and do want to remind you all to please be safe, wear a mask, practice social distancing. It is our responsibility. We're lucky enough to be able to come here and participate together in person, not behind a screen. So let's be responsible so we can keep doing that, and hopefully this is the last year for a while that this will be the case. That said, I've already introduced my two panelists, but I think it's fair to give them an opportunity to say a little bit more about themselves. So you guys want to take a minute?
As Michael said, my name is James Gaspard. I'm CEO and founder of Biochar now. We've been making high quality carbon now for almost 12 years. We've been involved in the hemp and cannabis world since the beginning, since it was legal, right? We didn't sell before it was legal, right, Tate? But anyway, we make a really unique product that we'll get into more as we go along, but we make a carbon that has both cation and anion exchange properties, so we bind up the nutrients and release them to the plant and act as a battery in the soil, but we'll explain it more later. Tate?
Awesome. Nice to see you, James. Thanks for the intro, I really appreciate it. I am Tate Dooley. I'm the CEO and founder of Key to Life Supply. We actually started as Key to Life Nutrients, which was just an organic fertilizer company based around stimulating biologicals and using organic acids to promote healthy crops. We are blessed enough to not only be in the industry for 10 years now in hemp and cannabis, like James said, but also have bloomed into a vertical and horizontal supply chain fulfillment solutions provider for hemp and cannabis growers and lifestyle advocates. So we're all about the progression of the industry. We're all about high tides raise all boats and being collaborative with all these other awesome companies so that we can really push the industry forward.
Yeah, that's a great thing. I think rising tides raise all ships is definitely the theme of the biological industry right now in bioinputs, because they are relatively new, right? But actually, I think in the hemp industry, one thing that we've seen at Impella, and I imagine you guys see the same thing, is there's quite a wide adoption of these types of products. Hemp growers are pretty innovative by nature. I think we push the envelope a lot, and definitely more than conventional agricultural crops. So incorporating things like biological products makes a lot of sense. But that being said, I think we should get right into it, because we all do something slightly different. Impella focuses entirely on biostimulants. You guys are more of a vertically integrated and horizontally integrated supply company, and James has a very unique biochar product, all of which can be used together, I imagine, but they're all used for slightly different purposes. And that being said, we all have a lot of competitors too, and just like in the hemp industry, in the biological side of our industry, there's a lot of, quote-unquote snake oil. There's a lot of products that claim to be biochar or biocarbon that aren't. There's a lot of microbial products that make wild claims that aren't necessarily giving farmers the benefits that we want them to see. So denigrating the quality of the whole industry that we're working in here a little bit. And I think that's a great place for us to start. So James, why don't you take this one first, and then Tate, you follow up. But my question for you guys is, how in your own companies are you differentiating yourselves and the products that you're selling and really making your claims stand out to growers when you're fighting an uphill battle against people who maybe are making claims on products that can't deliver.
Yeah. In the biochar business, believe it or not, it's even worse than the hemp business. If you Google biochar, you'll find over 1 million hits. And we're actually the only company in the whole biochar industry that has specific governmental approvals that we have. And we're the only one with certain properties that we have. And that's according to, government lab testing and stuff. So what we do is we focus on large corporate clients and people who actually care about the product and they test. So our job is to get the customer to test. And if they test, we always win. And we have over 500 large corporate clients that care about quality and consistency. And we work with the governments to make sure that the proper approvals are put in place, especially because we do a lot of work in Superfund sites or remediation as well, and things of that nature where things matter. We have some of our competitors that have poisoned hemp fields. They make all these claims, put stuff out there, and they end up poisoning the field. Well, it's going to shake out over time. But I just always wondered if there was anything more dysfunctional than the hemp industry, and it's the biochar industry. So I get to play in both all day long. So, but that's what we do. You just have to make a high quality product and deal with customers who care about the quality and consistency and actually do testing. Because if it works in the real world, that's the test, not on what some claim from some snake oil salesman that says he can do this, that, and the other thing. And what I really run into a lot is I'm actually competing against my own data with other companies. They try to throw my data at a customer saying this is our data. So that's always unique. How about you?
So many things that you said ring true in the fertilizer business, the hemp industry, as well as the carbon industry, that's for sure. I can't agree with James enough when he says just making a really good, sound product is the backbone. That is literally how Keto Life started, like I said, out of my garage over 10 years ago, selling fertilizer in Ziploc bags with Sharpie marker on them. We built our product, our brand equity on solid products that were highly diversified from what was being offered in the marketplace traditionally. So for example, going specifically to microbes, we've got our microbial product is separated from our fungal product, but also both are bound and impregnated onto specific food sources that allow those microbial or mycorrhizal communities to really blossom, thrive, and flourish throughout a multitude of soil food web environments. So we have focused on niche style organic products that are diverse from everything else in the market. And one of the biggest things that we're proud to be involved in is the transition of an organic grower, of a commercial grower into an organic system. When Keto Life first came out, a lot of the organic fertilizers out there were manures or composts or things like that. There was nothing really that was very soluble that could work through a commercial irrigation, fertigation, drip system. And that was kind of the problem that we solved first in the industry, which was really a blessing for us because it allowed us to go into commercial grow environments and switch them over to organic fertilizers by just switching their product instead of an entire infrastructure change. If you've got to go in and change a commercial grow over to old school organic techniques like raised beds and top dressing and periodic compost applications, a lot of them won't do it. But if you can come into their pre-existing irrigation system, hook them up with some microbes, organic acids that are going to work in their commercial grade system, it's a lot easier of a transition for them. So that was one of the main things we focused on, was how to incorporate organics into a pre-existing synthetic system to allow overnight change for the organic cultivation community.
Yeah, I'm really glad you touched on the organic thing, because I think when we're talking about biological products, biochar type products, the old school of thought might be that these products only necessarily work in an organic system, and I don't think that's really the case, right? James, I imagine you have a lot of customers who use your product, your biochar, in conventional farming applications. Tate, imagine it's the same for you. I know it's certainly the same for us. How do you guys see that developing, or do you see the products that you offer, and biological products as a whole, not only forcing a transition to more organic practices, but actually just forcing a transition to more sustainable practices? So some combination of both conventional practices that can be sustainable and organic practices, when applicable and when they're really, really sustainable. How do you see that unfolding?
Well, as I said, we do work with some of the major corporations, and they, it's important to have the organic certifications. In fact, we were a pioneer in getting biochar listed as an organic product on OMRI certification and things of that nature. So it's very, very important. Some people in the remediation world, it's not as important, but we just make an organic product, and then those that don't want organic, fine, it's still organic, okay? It's still organically certified. We have to do the whole audit trail and source of the wood and all this other kind of stuff. So it forces a higher standard out there, and we know that what we're putting out there has no toxins in it, so it benefits everything, the whole system. But before we go much further, why don't you didn't even explain your microbial system, on the last question.
Sure, well, I didn't want to steal the spotlight there, but yeah, I mean, I appreciate you bringing it up, and very similar to Tate, I think we come at this with a different approach, but the microbial products we develop, of course, we intend to be used in pretty much any agricultural system. So Impello's approach for all of these types of products, and really the whole biological and sustainable agriculture movement, is to take existing technologies or new technologies that can be incorporated practically into any system. Tate was hitting on that before, but can also be loaded onto something like biochar, can be really easily incorporated into a system, and then can provide some benefits that you really can't get just using conventional fertilizers or carbon dioxide. So we're really, in essence, adding additional variables to the plant growth equation, and without that, we've seen over the years that plant quality can be lacking, plant yields can be lacking, and it's almost this indefinite cycle or infinite loop of having to constantly spoon feed more and more conventional inputs or non-organic substances to the plant while you're depleting your soil quality. So yeah, I mean, with all of this, the transition to more sustainable practices, we look at not necessarily forcing somebody to switch entirely to organic, but instead taking the opportunity to adapt their agricultural practices to include more of these sustainable technologies like biochar, like microbial inoculants, which is something we specialize in, and see the benefits in any type of system that they may be, whether it's indoors or outdoors, any type of media, any crop really, because they're products that just work, and I think that's something you both hit on. So
yeah, and just you two guys here, when you both started your company, you wanted quality ingredients, high quality, consistent, and we were fortunate enough that they both found their ways to our door when they needed their biochar, and because they did testing. So this is an example of both of these companies. If you do the testing, we always win.
How many years now?
10, 12.
Well, then I've been working with you?
Yeah.
10 years?
Yeah, 10 years, yeah.
Yeah, and something that Michael touched on is transitioning a conventional farmer to an organic style system. And he hit it right on the head. One of the best things that we see to incorporate is actually a transitional philosophy. So instead of coming into a commercial farm and trying to get them to go to 100% organic cultivation overnight, it's a very difficult thing to do, even with proper consultation, on-site management. So we really like to build out a phased approach transition. And microbials, for example, are a great transitional piece to incorporate on top of conventional organics, or conventional farming, excuse me. A lot of people are under this idea and concept that synthetics and organics don't work together at all. Well, actually, all of these bacteria in my product, I'm sure as well as in Impello Biosciences, are salt index bacteria that actually crave some of these sodium compounds to certain extents and need them to proliferate their species. Further, there's no such thing on the planet, even it's funny, you know, coming out of COVID, there's no such thing as a sterile environment anywhere on the planet. You can even go down into 2,000 degree lava water ducts in the ocean at extreme pressures, and you'll find extremophile bacteria. They found extremophile bacteria on the outside of the International Space Station. So the concept of salts and organics and microbes don't work together is very far from the truth. And one thing that we always like to see people, or should prove to people in the transitionary phase, is incorporating a microbiological product, or a mycorrhizal inoculant, or a heavy set of humic, fulvic, amino acid complexes to be able to stimulate pre-existing microbiological communities in their soil.
Yeah, that's a really good point to hit on. I think durability is a good word to describe that, right? Biochar, very durable product. You add it to the soil, it's not going anywhere. I mean, James could talk almost as long as the biochar will stick around in the soil on that. Same thing with the microbes. The microbes that you were talking about, Tate, those bacillus that they'll find on the outside of the space station. Excellent plant growth promoting bacteria, something Impello incorporates into all of our products because it doesn't just work in the lab, it doesn't just work in a petri dish. It will survive, the tumultuous trip through a drip line into a field. It will live and grow on plant roots and around in that soil environment and actually provide the benefits that we're touting. And when you're spending as much money as you are on some of these products, that's really important in the first place. But it does bring me to another question, which is a lot of the products we're talking about here can be pretty expensive for growers to adopt. A lot of conventional chemicals are pretty heavily subsidized. They're mass produced and they're commodities, so they're pretty cheap compared to these biological type products. How do you guys go about justifying ROI of your products to farmers? And is there something more than just the growth promoting or the soil health enhancements that the farmer gets that you can help sell or use to convince them to incorporate your product?
Well, on our product, we've got 12 years of data underneath our belt so far. In fact, there's people in the audience that have used the product and have seen 200-300% yield increases. And but when you're competing against snake oil people, sometimes they don't take the word for it, and some of the hemp guys don't want to tell their neighbor what they're doing. So, but we do have university data showing more than double the yields now that can't be argued with. But more importantly, so the ROI is recovered on our product the first harvest. But some farmers just don't have the upfront capital to install our stuff. So here in the last few months with the new administration, or as the old one was transitioning out, there was a new program put in place, USDA, that actually will reimburse farmers or ranchers to install our carbon in the ground. So now we can go to a farmer or carbon or a rancher, and basically if we can't give it away, we all have problems. And so we have in fact, just this morning, the rules are still changing as we speak. Last night I was emailed 2 new forms that hemp farmers specifically have to fill out to get the reimbursement. But if anybody has any questions, you can approach us afterward, come to our booth. We have salespeople to walk you through it. Anybody on the video, just reach out through our website at Biochar Now and we'll explain it. But the beautiful thing about this program is Michael or Tate can take our carbon, add their products to it, and it still gets reimbursed up to a certain level annually. And then this program is in place, and what's the longest thing that ever lasts is a temporary government program, right? So it just started. So we need to take advantage of it. Word's not out, but Colorado has approved it. There's been, I think, 20 states out of the 50 in the last couple of months that have approved it. The others are in process of approving it. But this is literally one where if you know the right people, we can hook you up for free, okay? Anyway,
That's pretty
It
incredible.
might not be today, but it'll be down the road for sure. Yeah, and programs like this are a huge benefit for sustainable horticulture and agriculture moving forward. We've definitely got, time is on our side with carbon sink, tax credits, organic transitions. This is definitely the way that humanity is working. So, we're very lucky to be positioned here at this time for this transition in agriculture, and it's a beautiful opportunity.
Yeah, well said. I mean, that program that you're talking about, James, is I think one of the more exciting government programs to come out over the last few years, at least so far as us soil nerds are concerned.
Yeah, and the irony is they're paying you to sequester carbon. They don't even pay attention to the benefits of what you're hearing here. You're being reimbursed for carbon sequestration.
So, I mean, that becomes a pretty obvious, ROI pitch to any farmer who's interested in making that transition to more sustainable practices. Who's even thinking about it. It's pretty tough to beat free, and if you're actually doing something to improve your own soil in the, at the same time, that's again hard to beat. With so many of our products, biochar of course sticks around. Microbial products that improve soil health year over year. Not only, I think something that's important for everyone to remember is that not only are you getting the immediate benefit, not only are you getting products for free, but you're really investing in your soil, and you're going to see that compounding benefit, in the coming years. And for a lot of farmers who have been cultivating the same land for, many generations and have seen declines in soil health and soil productivity, and they have to keep, incorporating new chemical products or new products from the agro giants, and they don't like what they're seeing. Well, I think, the products alone that we're talking about here can help solve that issue or reverse the direction that was going, and making it free. I mean, yeah, you really can't get better than that.
That's like one of the biggest pieces that really helps to transition a conventional farmer, is pointing to their own case study. Data is what James is driving home on. You start asking them, so how's your farm been over the last 10 years? Oh, well, I lost this piece of land over there. We've got drainage issues, and we've got moisture buildup issues, and it really all does go back to minerals, nutrients, and microbiologicals in the soil that affect how the soil responds to environmental inputs. So one huge thing that we're seeing people transition away from synthetics into organics is because they're starting to think forward. They're looking in the rearview mirror, and they're also looking out the windshield at the same time, and they're saying, hey, my children are going to be trying to farm this land in the future. Maybe we should consider building the soil health, getting these carbon tax credits, having less pest and disease in our crop, having higher nutrient density in our crop, having further marketability of our crop because it is organic, sustainable. So those are a lot of the attributes that are really the triggers for this organic transition from conventional, is what I'm seeing.
Yeah, that's very well said. You got something else, James?
No, I was just going to add that with our product, we have like a 17,000 year half-life in the soil, according to government labs. And then when you add, the microbes that these guys can add to it, it creates a living soil. And then it's what was here, 10,000 years ago before we started tearing up the soil and plowing or whatever, whenever they invented the plow. I slept through that history lesson, but it's been a while.
Right.
But, and then these programs I'm speaking of, we're talking up to $845 an acre annually that you can use for your amendments, as long as it includes the carbon in it. So it's not a small amount, and we just need to take advantage and turn the corner, and start restoring the ecosystems.
Yeah, very well said. I mean, you remind me of something that Tim Gordon on Impello's team always uses as an analogy, which is the biochar with that long shelf life or half-life is like a microbial hotel. And when you're adding it to the soil, you're providing a home for all these microorganisms that have been depleted in soils, but really are crucial for soil health. And that home, that microbial hotel, is not going anywhere. So again, it plays into the investment. But
Yeah, for every teaspoon of that Biochar laid down, there's a football field of surface area for microbials to cling on to, exchange ions, cations, all different types of organic acids. There's a lot of things that are going on there, and you want to talk about a way to be able to host more biology in a conventional soil so that they see faster, more long-term results is by incorporating microbials, organic acids, and carbon all at the same time.
Absolutely. So, I mean, with all this said, is there any one thing that either of you see as the biggest impediment or the number one thing that we can do to improve the adoption of these products moving forward? I mean, of course, making it free that's a good one. It's most people should be able to understand that the soil health promoting benefits are
it still takes a mind reset. You know, most conventional farmers, you can give it away and they're going to complain if they have to come pick it up. But you know, it just takes some education, and it takes the younger generation realizing that they're going to live here. So it's time, you know, and their kids eventually will live here. So we've got to clean up the mess. We got to turn this thing around. So that's what it's going to take more than anything. Some of the old war dogs, you're not going to change their minds. You know, that's life. But there's enough work we can do with the younger generation to get it turned around.
And one big, huge thing that I think is, you know, without getting political and choosing sides here, we do have a more sustainable administration that's taken office. And one big thing that I think will help to increase this transition is carbon tax credit programs, organic sustainability programs, but most importantly, flipping the political aspect of subsidizing Roundup and chemical-based farming is totally backwards. These farmers are getting further subsidy and tax incentive and financial gain or decreased investment with these traditional synthetic chemicals, pesticides, herbicides, and fungicides. Well, what Key to Life's real heart and soul mission is to play an impactful role in the reverse of this subsidization. So we want to be able to not only present the data to appropriate parties, but we want to reverse the subsidization from synthetic and chemical farming to organic farming, because we all do organic things here, and I'm sure all of us could probably preach for the next week on how hard it is to A, register an organic product, especially in states like California, B, implement it, C, get any type of co-op to approve it, D, have any type of tax subsidy, and further down the ladder. So our heart and soul mission is to play a reversal in the role of subsidized chemical farming to subsidized organic farming. Because in my eyes, a farmer should be rewarded for using organic compounds and things like kelp, a natural plant growth regulator, and organic nutrient. That should be a benefit to the farmer, and they should be subsidized for that, not for applying glyphosate and 2,4-D, which has been proven to basically be in all of our blood and urine streams.
Yeah, that's a good point. Part of this, I mean, you hit the nail on the head at the end there too. Part of the uphill battle that we're facing is a lack of data, is a bunch of misleading claims from products like this. But in reality, the real science is coming out. Universities are really starting to pick up and do a lot more third-party research on these types of products. We see the government itself, coming out with initiatives that promote the use of this. So yeah, I think it's a positive outlook, right, in the direction that we're heading. And anything we can do to get people to adopt one little practice at a time is good, whether it's incorporating beneficial bacteria into a conventional agriculture system or incorporating biochar onto their land and getting paid for it. There's a lot of opportunities out there, and most of them are being pretty thoroughly vetted, which should inspire confidence, I think, in anyone even considering or not considering the switch to more sustainable practices. But yeah, if you look at the landscape, like you said, looking through the windshield and the rear of your mirror, it's pretty obvious which direction we should be heading, and providing the data that people need to feel comfortable with the decision, making it an investment that they can manage. those are all steps in the right direction. So, do you guys have any closing remarks, or should we open it up for questions?
Just want to say thank you guys for supporting the hemp and cannabis movement. This plant really is an opportunity to revolutionize agriculture and be able to get these reversals of these subsidies and this mentality that's been prevalent in agriculture for a really long time. We're going to be able to use this beautiful plant, no matter the chemotype behind it, to revolutionize the products, systems, services, and as well as politics surrounding agriculture. So thank you guys very much for being a part of this. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, and just for those here and online that you're considering going from conventional into organic or to start growing the hemp and you've got a polluted piece of ground, we do have data showing our product will bind up all the toxins, it'll bind up the glyphosate, the atrazine, the herbicides and things of that, and the pesticides. So, if you're thinking, where to start, the companies up here can help you get started even on the most polluted piece of ground. So, anyway.
Yeah, that's very well said, and I do think it's important. Tate kind of alluded to it, and James been circling it, but to remember that a lot of these technologies that we're focusing on are obviously primarily focused on improving soil health, but through that we can also improve the nutritional value, the nutritional density of crops. We can improve the health of plants, people, and the entire planet, and that's really what Impello is all about. I can tell that's what you guys are all about. We need more companies doing this, and we need more people to actually be incorporating those technologies so that we can make the difference that I think we know we can. So why don't we open it up for questions? Anybody in the audience want to start us off?
Last year I grew 6 acres of hemp and I had a lot of issue with the emitters clogging the slime, and I wondered how your products would alleviate that if you're moving in that direction.
That's a really good question. I think we could all probably respond to this. I'll take the lead on it. So one of the biggest pain points I've seen with farmers is, the ones that we're talking about, the guys who are trying to transition from conventional chemicals over to something more organic or sustainable, is that they run into problems like that all the time. And unfortunately, it's all too common. There are ways that you can formulate and get around that. So, like with Impello's best-selling bacterial inoculant, it's a blend of 3 bacillus species called Tribus. What we did was very carefully analyze what actually needed to be in the product and what we could do without. And to some extent that was very counterintuitive, because you want to throw at as many good things at the plant, in a single solution as you possibly can. But there's so much complexity between the microbes, microbe interactions. There's different interactions between the microbes and whatever ingredients are in the formula. And oftentimes, when you start making the blend a little bit too complicated, you run into issues like bacterial biofilms being produced, and you get emitters clogging, and then everything that you were going for is totally undone. It's basically a useless or a counterproductive endeavor. So, speaking specifically to Impello's products, we've always kept that in mind, and we're always very concerned about the practical application of any of our products. And again, just because something works in the lab doesn't mean that it's going to work in the real world. So we're pretty reluctant to release anything and to encourage anybody to run something through a drip line if we haven't tested pretty much every possible combination and distilled the formula to something simple that basically has minimal chance of failure. We try to remove as many failure points as possible. I think you guys can both respond to this too.
And first off, I fully agree with everything that Michael just said. Another way that you can really get ahead of that issue is through redundancy. So for example, we incorporate not only biologicals to help consume some of these bioslimes, but we also incorporate line cleaning agents that can sterilize some of these biofilms in the drip line without doing drastic damage to your soil food web system, oftentimes zero soil food web system damage. Another thing is just cutting edge technology, and going back to microbes, like Key to Life has a product called Enzyme, And this is actually a, once again, very specific formulation of microbials. And one of them in particular is very interesting in how it works. It's called Bacillus safensis. So Bacillus safensis is actually the most potent and powerful inorganic acid or inorganic material converting enzyme on the planet. It's so much so that actually the bacteria was discovered in a NASA laboratory, and it was actually purpose built for terraforming and or creating atmospheres and or converting inorganic materials to organic. So a lot of these enzyme products and a lot of these microbials can help to eliminate that on their own, but I like to get ahead of the problem with redundancy, like I was saying, by rotating out and staying on a strict schedule of preventative irrigation maintenance programs as well as soil food web systems. So it's a little bit of everything, just like biochar, just like microbials, just like mycorrhizal, organic nutrients, cultivation in general. It's never just one thing. What I've always found is it's always a 360-degree system of things that all need to be incorporated simultaneously and or in schedule with each other to get ahead of the problem.
Okay, thank you.
Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Great. Anybody else?
Hey, so you guys were talking a little bit about how your products had some impact on biomass that the plants are producing. You have some studies that show that. What about secondary metabolite production? What have some of your products shown for secondary metabolites by plants? And by that I mean the terpenes, the flavonoids, and the cannabinoids.
Of course. That's a fun question. So, this is one of those things where with the amount of regulation around our types of products, especially microbial inoculants, to some extent we're limited with what we can actually talk about here, but in a very general sense, not talking specifically about our products, of course. The bacteria in a lot of Impello's products are known to induce systemic resistance, which is basically the plant's defense pathways. And most of those metabolites that you're talking about are actually regulated by some of these pathways. So you can more or less trick the plant into increasing its production of certain metabolites that would help it defend itself, and also actually just help the plant grow and survive. Those being cannabinoids, terpenes, flavonoids, stilbenoids, pretty much anything that's produced along a secondary metabolite pathway. And the research is always ongoing in this area because the biochemistry behind it and the biosynthetic pathways are quite complex. So we're elucidating a little bit more and more every day. It's something Impello is really, really interested in because with a plant like cannabis, where there's so much potential, there's so much of the plant's energetic resources devoted to the production of these things, it makes perfect sense to use nature to accent that and highlight it as much as possible. And the results can be, I think pretty impressive and also hugely satisfying. Just to see what you can do with the force of nature, the power of nature.
And one huge benefit is, you hit it right on the head, and that was actually a really great question. All plant secondary metabolites are completely interrelated to a plant's health system. So there's like 3 to 4 different levels of plant health, depending on which pyramid you're looking at, based on which author. But the higher that you go on the plant health pyramid, the higher possibility or genetic potential your plant has to produce plant secondary metabolites. And when we look at a plant like cannabis and hemp specifically, all terpenes and cannabinoids, being plant secondary metabolites, are actually majority protein derived. So you really do need to make sure that you've got the necessary nitrogen or amino acid converting bacteria to be able to encourage a higher level of plant secondary metabolite. And what's beautiful is as you start and climb this pyramid of plant health, not only will you see the benefits of further plant secondary metabolites, but in direct correspondence, you're also going to see diminished pest and disease. Once again, not talking about my products, just talking about microbes in general. But these decreased dependence on other types of nutrients that help the plant to climb to these elevated health levels is directly correlated to the microbiological diversity in the rhizoflora or in the root system of the plant, and how much diversity of nutrient, organic acid, or biostimulant that those microbials can convert specifically for your plant at the time and place that it needs them to transfer to plant secondary metabolites. So for instance, we've been able to hit 38, 39% THC in cannabis. I've hit over 30% CBD in hemp with a lot less genetic development over the last decade plus that's gone into cannabis. So we're really excited to be able to explore these plant level health patterns and how they're influenced by all the different variables throughout the soil food web system and microbiological network.
And with our product, like I said at the beginning, data.
Us too.
And the thing of it is, I have never seen a tighter group to keep their data to themselves than the cannabis and hemp people. And, it's like they're always looking for the edge. And I am forever grateful to a guy who got a little bit too happy about his results and posting it on Facebook, because that's the first time I heard anybody with the numbers like what Tate just said, because they never say the numbers. And the day after that guy posted on Facebook, we sold more char than we had in the 10 years previously. So, it's just hard to get the data out of this industry. We do have data in another industry, but it does increase all the secondary stuff. And a healthier plant produces healthier results.
It's a healthier plant, and part of this is all the magic that our microbes can do is really limited if you apply it to the soil and there's nowhere for it to live. So, having something like biochar around, some beneficial environment for beneficial microbes is extremely important to see any of these things. So, and getting it to the plant in the first place, which kind of harks back to that first question. It's a very dynamic situation for sure, but a lot can come out of it. So I think we're running a little over time here, so we should probably leave it at that. Is there any other questions, quick questions? Okay.
We thank y'all for y'all's attendance, and we thank online for everybody's attendance.
Yeah, thank you, James. Thank you, Tate. Appreciate you all paying attention and asking good questions.
Happy planet, happy people. Thank you.